Hello, good people. It's great to be back with you. I have been wanting to, for a while, I've been wanting to continue my conversation that I had with John Vervaeke about my theory about parabolic knowledge adding to his 4 P's of knowing. And I had a great conversation with him about this, but since we had our conversation, I've really been thinking about some of the issues that he brought up. And I really wanted to get back into it and elaborate on it. I've been delaying just because of the complexity of it. And I've been prompted to get on with it by a discussion that John Vervaeke had with the guys on the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord. I didn't even know this conversation was going on, but somebody sent me a link to the YouTube video of John doing a Q&A, and they were bringing up the question of parabolic knowledge in this Q&A. They brought up the question with John. So now I've got to get on with this other little piece of it that I wanted to do. So let me just recap real quick. I had a conversation with John about a particular situation that I had observed. So you take a little child, and a little child setting the table, and picks up the knife and says, Daddy, picks up the fork and says, Mommy, and picks up the spoon and says, Baby. And we're talking about a real small child here, maybe just 3 years old, or maybe not even 3 years old yet. So my question with John is, what does the child know? Because remember, John has pointed out that when you compare any two things, you have a combinatorially explosive number of ways that the things are different from each other, and a combinatorially explosive number of ways in which they are similar to each other. But the child, in making this, in doing this, is collapsing that combinatorially explosive nature of the differences and similarities, and seeing a relationship between the knife, fork, and spoon, and a daddy, mommy, and baby. So I believed that parabolic knowledge was a way in which the combinatorially explosive nature of similarities and dissimilarities is collapsed. And so I asked him, if this is not another way of knowing, then which of his 4 P's would it fit into? And John seemed to think that it was a form of propositional knowing, even though the child would not be able to state it in the form of a proposition. If you were to ask the child, why is the knife the daddy? You know, the child is too young to possibly say, well, you know, the knife is the biggest, and my dad is the biggest one in the family, so the knife has to be the daddy. Probably would not be able to say that. And it might not even be a size relationship, because the child might do exactly the same thing with 3 blocks that are all the same size. So the child would not be able to say it, but John says that you have propositional knowledge even before you're able to make the proposition verbally, that whenever you are seeing a relationship between two things, that is a kind of propositional knowledge. Okay, so that was the point. That thing that John said was a point at which my mind kept doing and niggling at that and thinking, you know, is that really the case? Is a propositional statement the only way that we have to say the relationships between things? Okay. Now, propositions do state relationships. You can think of it in terms of like a declarative sentence, right? So if I say that apple is red, then I'm stating a relationship between that apple and the color red, or redness. If I say, you know, a horse is a mammal, I'm saying a relationship between horse and the category of mammal. So it is true that propositions are statements of relationships between things. Now, is there another way to state relationships? Okay, so this takes me to some of the thinking that I had to do with when I was teaching grammar. So I've been a homeschool teacher for a long time and teaching children grammar. So one of the things that you do when you're teaching children how to analyze sentences, because you're getting ready for them to diagram sentences, you had to know that I would be a person who loved to diagram sentences, right? So I'm teaching the children how to analyze a sentence and you have to find the subject and the verb of the sentence. Well, the easiest way to do this is to teach the child prepositions. Teach the prepositions and have them find the prepositions in the sentence, find the object of the preposition, and so you're having them find the prepositional phrases, because the prepositional phrase is made up of the preposition and the object of the preposition, and then cross through the prepositional phrases. Once you've crossed out the prepositional phrases from the sentence, then it becomes very easy to find the subject and the verb, because the subject or the verb never occurs within a prepositional phrase. So, here's the question, is there such a thing as prepositional knowledge, which would be a kind of statement of a relationship that is not a proposition? So I think yes. Now, before John throws his hands up in despair that I'm promiscuously multiplying the ways of knowing, I do intend to show that prepositional knowledge is or lies under parabolic knowledge. They're the same thing at different levels. So in the Discord server, when they were having this discussion, they kind of intuited that parabolic knowledge had something to do with navigation. And then John went on and immediately connected this with narrative and then to symbolism. But this is going up. And what I think I want to do is go down first and then maybe work up. So I was very interested that John did talk about microbes and whether microbes have a kind of knowledge, and said that the kind of knowledge they would have is participatory knowledge. So let's think about a microbe. Let's think about like a paramecium. Paramecium's that little slipper-shaped microbe that you learned about in school. It's got it's encircled by a bunch of little cilia, little hair-like projections that it uses to swim through the water. And let's see, it's got a little spot on it that's like an eye, but it's not really an eye. It tells like light. It can distinguish between light and dark. And it's got a mouth so it can eat. It's got a little excretory system so it can get rid of waste. So it participates in being alive as itself. And it has to have a sense of when that participation, of whether that participation in being alive is working well or not working so well. It's threatened, right? So what are the things that might threaten it? Well, hunger might threaten it, or lack of energy, we could say, might threaten it. So, what does it do to solve that problem? It eats, okay? So what does it do to eat? Well, it has to locate food somehow, sense where there's food, take aim at the food, go toward the food by swimming through the water, and then bring the food into itself. Then it's also its participation in being alive could be threatened by a buildup of waste, so it has to send the waste out of itself. It can also be threatened by conditions in the water, like maybe the temperature or the salinity or the acidity, etc. So it can move itself through the water to better conditions for itself, or towards warmth or towards light, etc. So it maintains its participation in being, its participatory knowing. It's to be maintained by requiring actions that are expressed. When we talk about them, we're expressing them in terms of prepositions, right? Embodiment in an environment requires a kind of prepositional knowledge. So when we work up the great chain of being, I was very interested that John Vervaeke and Jordan Hall had a conversation about the great chain of being. I was like, yay, I'm so happy to bring the great chain of being into this conversation. This is great, okay? So if we go up the great chain of being, we go up to organisms that have to learn. Now, learning requires an elaboration of prepositional knowledge into parabolic. They're actually the same thing, but at different levels. So let me use an example. Let's talk about a lion cub, okay? Now, lionesses do most of the hunting in the lion pride, and so the lion cubs learn to hunt from the lionesses, all right? So let's kind of think through this together. Okay, so the lion cub is going to observe its mother hunting. we're going to say, let's say that she leaps on the back of a zebra, she tears the throat of the zebra out, kills it, okay? So the lion cub is going to copy the actions of the mother. Now let's say the lion cub finds like a baby gazelle that's injured and does the same thing that the mother does. How does the lion cub copy the lioness? All right, the lion cub has to have this kind of prepositional knowledge that's gone over into parabolic knowledge. How's that? So has to recognize that, you know, mother is to mother's mouth as I am to my mouth, okay? Mother leaping on the zebra is, or the mother is to leaping on the zebra as my action is to leaping on the gazelle, all right? The zebra is to throat as gazelle is to throat. All of these things are parabolic, because the reason it's called parabolic is it's being thrown together. You're throwing things together, matching them up, right? Any kind of imitation requires parabolic knowledge. But even apart from symbology, the lion cub is literal about his parabolic knowledge. It's pairing up literal things, it's not a symbolic thing. Now, a child, on the other hand, is symbolic about it. The child takes the parabolic knowledge and then imposes it upon the lower order, like imposing the idea of a family or the structure of a family upon some silverware. But there is a deep continuity. I love this whole idea of the deep continuity through the chain of being. There's a deep continuity between the symbology and the most basic prepositional knowledge of a simpler organism. It's prepositional knowledge that creates parabolic knowledge. So let me go to the little analogy that I had talked to John about, because I had said, okay, think about this. How I was using this as an illustration of how quickly parabolic knowledge collapses the combinatorially explosive nature of the similarities and dissimilarities between two things. So if I say to you, bird is to wing as fish is to, instantly you'll think fin, okay? But why? Why do you pick fin? Why didn't you pick tail or scale or some other aspect of a fish? Well, it's because you think of the position on the body, right? Where on, see, I'm using a preposition, where on the body is the fin compared to where on the body of the bird is the wing. You see that it's the prepositional knowledge that makes the parabolic knowledge possible. So if I say, you know, feather, a bird is to feather as fish is to, you'll instantly say scale. You're not going to be confused and think gill or fin or something like that. You say it instantly, the combinatorial explosion is instantly collapsed, okay? So animals do have this sense of this analogical or parabolic knowledge. One way that this shows up is in dogs. So for example, dogs are able to recognize that their paws are analogous or parabolic to human hands, because dogs will attempt to use their paws to imitate human actions, things that humans do with their hands. And you know, dog trainers recognize this, that dogs get it. They kind of get that their paw is in some way analogous or parabolic to our hands. And fortunately, they don't have any opposable thumbs, so they're quite handicapped. Otherwise, they'd cause a great deal of mischief to us. So that is what I wanted to say about that. I wanted to bring in this this idea of the prepositional being underneath the parabolic, them really being the same things, only at different levels. So I'm not trying to promiscuously expand the P's of knowing, but I do think that this is not the same as propositional knowledge. It's prepositional, and I think that our grammatical structure kind of reveals that these are different things. So that's what I have to say about that. It's my little contribution to the discussion that's going on the escaping from the meaning crisis Discord, and I'm hoping to soon be able to talk with those guys, and that'll be an interesting conversation. But I hope that what I said here did not simply further confuse things, but actually was in some way helpful. So thanks so much for watching. Until we're together again, treat yourself as though you are someone you are responsible for helping, because you are responsible. So am I, and together we are making the world. Bye for now.